All right, let's start with the panel bug bounty. Great. Now what? So we have an excellent panel today. I'll briefly introduce and then let you guys introduce yourselves in under 1 second. So we have David. First of all, please forgive me if I get your last name wrong. I'll try my best. David Calligaris, Head of Vulnerability Research at Huawei, Germany. Dominic, Couture, Staff Security Engineer at GitLab. Madeline, Eckert, Senior Program Manager, Researcher Incentives at Microsoft. And Thomas Roth, Independent Security Researcher. All right, so 1 second.
Hi, everyone. I'm Madeline. I joined Microsoft about 8 months ago. Prior to that, I was working over at HackerOne, helping to run their vendor-managed bug bounty programs. So I'm excited to be here today and talk to you guys about my experience at both HackerOne and Microsoft and some of the differences there.
Thank you. I'm Dominic at GitLab for a little over 2 years, and we have our bug bounty program managed by HackerOne. And maybe a particularity is that we have mostly open source software, so you can look at our source code, and this makes an interesting dynamic with researchers.
Yeah, my name is Thomas Roth. I'm probably better known as Stack Smashing. And I come from the researcher side, so I'm the guy who submits to the bug bounties and gets burned all the time. And so it will be an interesting discussion, I think.
I'm David Calligaris. I work for Huawei for 5 years. I'm leading the team of vulnerability research and also the bug bounty program. So my team is doing fuzzing, variant analysis, and we use the vulnerabilities received in the bug bounty program to improve this process.
All right. So, yeah, bug bounty, as you know, has moved from nascent to mainstream security testing process now. It's killing our business too, because we are a pen testing company. But anyways, yeah. Now, if you see a lot of companies from different domains, we talk about healthcare, automotive, financial, all of them have some sort of a vulnerability disclosure or bug bounty program. So, with this panel, what we're going to do is we're going to talk beyond starting a vulnerability program, specifically in terms of how do we optimize returns on bug bounty practices to effectively incentivize and reward researchers. Nice. Focus and prioritize targets. Maintain testing engagements with the security community. So with that, let's start with the first question. All right. Beyond launching, how do you develop the community?
I can start that. So with our bug bounty program, a lot like how a lot of the company works at GitLab, we think that our transparency is what helps moving forward with researchers. We don't have too many secret practices or whatever. Our process on how our engineers triage bugs is public. And I mean, if someone doesn't like it, they can even open a merge request to change it. It's truly transparent and public. We disclose the security issues. And as I said, we're an open source company, so you can look at the code. You can look at how previous vulnerabilities were fixed. So this sort of stuff really builds a little community around that they get to know, get kind of to feel like they're almost part of the company because they get to see the discussions that happen around their bugs. So beyond the incentives, beyond the challenges or the contests we can build, the transparency around the entire development process helps incentivize people to just stay around and be part of the whole thing. And I think it's very motivating for many of our top hackers.
I know I'm going to get some spice. So, as I mentioned, coming from HackerOne, definitely using a vendor-based program is going to be different because there's a captive audience there within that community. So, as Dominic had said, there's a lot of really great tools that you can use to build a community, like within HackerOne. Moving over to Microsoft, it's a little bit of a different set of researchers. And one of the things that we've really focused on is that we don't just have a Microsoft researcher community, but rather we have a global researcher community. We're always looking to have anyone and everyone submit to us, no matter their region. And so something that we've been working on is making it more accessible. So beyond just our MBO program and some of the outreaches that we're doing, we are looking at revamping quarterly leaderboards. We're starting up badges, digital badges, so that our researchers can proudly go on their Twitter or their LinkedIn and promote the fact that they are a high accuracy researcher within Microsoft. And then also looking at some development paths for researchers when they do come in. If, for example, if they happen to focus in a specific area, what does it look like then bringing that researcher on for a grant or for a private challenge, and then developing more opportunities for them within this space?
Yeah, I think you mentioned the rewards program, and so maybe a bit of a story on community building. So I get invited to a lot of bug bounties, and I get a lot of emails like, hey, do you want to join our researcher program? Do you want to join XYZ? One of the problems is that I get an initial mail, I get an invitation to the program, and I think that's the only point in time where the program exists, because afterwards I never hear of it again, I never get an email again. For example, in the context of Microsoft, I know it's changing. I got invited to this researcher rewards program, and then I got access to MSDN that expired. I tried to reach out again. I'm like, hey guys, do you still do this? Is this program still alive? And I just got emails like, sorry, I moved departments. I'm not sure who you should ask. I couldn't find anything on the internet, and I felt like, where's that community I got told about? But I guess that's changing now, so I'm excited about that.
Thomas, I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Sorry.
For anyone who is looking for information or for support from our researcher community, definitely reach out to bounty@microsoft.com. We are happy to help support you and make sure that you get routed to the appropriate teams. So, Thomas, can I expect to get an email from you? I won't.
From my side, what I can say to engage researchers is helping them to set up the targets. So maybe, despite my colleagues here, my colleagues panelists here, they run a bug bounty program on public website. Instead, I'm running a bug bounty program on a device. And starting on a new device means a lot of cost, because you need to create your own device on your debug environment to find bugs and so on. So helping researcher to have access to expensive device, this is something that can be helpful, or provide him instructions how to debug some aspects inside the mobile phone or whatever. Or, for example, with some trusted researchers that we have a history, they submit bugs to us and so on, we can give them devices that are in beta. And then, since the products are in beta, maybe it's more easy to find bugs, and the experience become also more remunerative. So,
yeah, I think that's a great point. And even us at GitLab, even if it's open source, I think many people here will have cloned an open source repository and had no clue how to build the application. So we also have all our development processes are public, and we also have Docker images if they just want to run everything. So really just making it easy to get started, because there are so many other programs that are probably easy to get started. So if you have like a 3-day ramp up to just figure out your environment, you might lose a researcher to another target that's more fun to work on. So really just make it easy. If you wake up in the morning and, hey, I feel like hacking on GitLab, it should be easy to be doing that within a reasonable amount of time and not just setting up endlessly.
All right. Now for the next question, please give me some disagreements and controversies, please. How do you handle conflicts? So I'll start with Madeline.
So I was actually chatting earlier today with some folks, and we all agreed that conflicts are sometimes one of the most interesting parts of our job. And it gives us an opportunity to choose to respond rather than react. And that means seeking to understand what is motivating the researcher to behave in this way. What is motivating the researcher to continue to reach out once a bug has been closed, for example, as not a vulnerability? Is there some credence here to that claim? And so when handling conflict, I think it's really important that you do have that moment of let's understand where this person is coming from rather than going straight for the ban button, as I like to call it. And my perspective on this definitely did shift when moving from HackerOne over to Microsoft. Microsoft has a no ban policy. And what I have found is that even if it's, one interaction to 6 months worth of interactions, eventually we do get to a place where both Microsoft and the researcher are able to work effectively together. And we never actually want to shut that door to collaboration, because the moment that you do ban someone is the moment that you lose them forever. And it does an impact to your customers.
Yeah, so sorry about that. Conflicts, we don't have a no ban policy. However, haven't seen too many of those in my couple of years, so that's a good sign that we have positive interactions mostly. It's really about discussions, and also I think that's something that we can realize when you work at a company with a bunch of people with a global background, what sometimes in the written text interaction in a language that is my second and quite possibly a third or fourth of the person I'm talking with, some stuff gets lost in translation and you're like, wow, this person is so rude. No, it's just how they could explain what they're trying to say. I probably come off rude once in a while, so you just keep that in the back of your mind and say, okay, let's just read what was said with the facts that are in the sentence, and let's not try to put an emotion behind the sentence. But sometimes it gets objectively rude. It's not an interpretation. This is difficult. We amended our policy to mention that, basically, as I mentioned, we host our program on HackerOne, so the HackerOne Code of Conduct applies, and there are bannable offenses on HackerOne that apply if someone is just outrageously offensive to people or just resorts to racism or whatever. But still, we'll try to have a warning and just say, we can sort this out if we talk, but if it stays really animated, we will just try to we will solicit the help from the HackerOne platform who triages, and also it's part of the advantage from a company side to have these people help us disarm conflicts and not get too personal with the person, not get into personal attacks or anything, just have a barrier between to disarm the conflict.
Funnily, coincidentally enough, I right now have a conflict with GitLab. Which so how do you feel about the overall process at HackerOne? So I submit my bug that I'm not going to go into detail about. Then I get a message from a golden retriever, literally. That's a picture of a dog.
Yeah. For context, there's a person on HackerOne who does triage, and this person is not a GitLab team member, but they work for HackerOne, and kind of to not have a name on it, it's golden retriever.
Right. And so, which already has very negative wording towards the researcher. There were the words doubt in there and so on, very strange wording. And then a day later it gets closed as informal without a real mitigation part, without clearance. Why is this informal? Because, I compromised the customer using this. I'm still compromising someone using it.
Yeah, it's the difficulty with having external people manage the triage for your application. In most cases, I would say they get it right. It's either they either get it right that it was indeed a bug, or they get it right that it was not a bug. I don't think their error rate is any worse than what it was when we handled it. However, it is more difficult from a hacker side, I think, to reach to the company and say, hey, I'm sorry, you made a mistake here. This is why at GitLab, the entire feed of report that comes from HackerOne is also posted in an internal Slack channel, and we have many people looking at it and keeping an eye on the things that look wrong, basically. If someone comes back and sends a question, it's at least worth reading what's their concern. We're not HackerOne will handle it. So that's how we try to resolve this. And I've been made aware that someone saw your comment and it's being worked on.
That's good to hear. Yeah. I'm kind of curious, how do you handle, I guess on Twitter, the hottest topic is like monetary conflicts. How do you all deal with like this, like you say it's a $500 bug, the researcher says, no, it's a $500,000 bug. How do you deal with that?
So, first of all, in my opinion, conflicts starts from expectation. So sometimes you have a guy submitting a vulnerability at 12 o'clock, and then at 1 o'clock, where is my triage? It's 1 hour. And then maybe don't understand the priorities that we give about the vulnerability internally, because we don't have only maybe the vulnerability of this guy. So the guy maybe is pretending a reply in 24 hours. That maybe could be an automatic, we take care of your case and we will proceed it. Then the vulnerability, based on the impact and so on, is getting triaged in a reasonable amount of time. But sometimes some researchers write every day to us, any update on my vulnerability, any update on my vulnerability, and that could be a reason of a conflict. About the value of the vulnerability, I'm a little bit old school, and I say, let's the code speak. So if you say that a vulnerability have high impact, provide a better POC. And we will provide even additional money if you provide with a POC that we are wrong. This is, in my opinion, we're living in a society based on science and technology, and let's evidence sustain our claims. This is, in my opinion, the most fair thing that we can have in proving the thing. Of course, we are aware that writing a POC and writing a full exploit for the vulnerability is a question of time, investment, and so on. But, we don't maybe pretend a full working exploit, but show that you can control a register or whatever that could trigger to a primitive in read-write or whatever. Of course, we'll change our mind. So when you have new evidence, you can change your opinion. This is something that, in my opinion, is important to say.
I think that managing expectations is a great place to start. And something that we do at Microsoft is we stick to our bounty amounts that we publish. There are no exceptions. There's no bonuses. And we don't do evaluation based off of, but this had really big impact. If it's out of scope, it's out of scope. If it's in scope, it's in scope. And while that might seem harsh or like we don't care about the research that you are submitting, it's done in that way so that each and every researcher has a consistent and fair experience with Microsoft. And I think that another thing that we've touched on earlier in our discussions is that bug bounty is not necessarily a pay for everything. It's a tool that we use strategically on top of all of our other security tools, and there needs to be an associated ROI on it. So our scope is set for a very specific reason, and our researchers that do participate in bug bounty are helping us to achieve a goal, which is to understand our attack surface, gather data, and then go back and then make broad mitigations that then help to reduce that risk for our customers. And so that's why we do have transparent updates and a change log and everything published on our pages, so that when there are bounty disputes, we're able to go and reference that, and each and every researcher can expect that consistent experience.
Yeah, it's a good point with the expectations. I think, once again, it's a place where transparency helps a lot. And if you are upfront with what you pay, how you pay, like how long you're going to take to pay, what does the researcher need to submit to get the money, and just really leave no questions unanswered, that solves a lot of conflicts. And when you have we tie the money to CVSS score, and which in itself is slightly controversial in some circles, but at least people know ahead of time. And we have a calculator that we use to map the score to money, and this calculator is public. And inside the calculator, like if attack complexity high, low, and all that stuff, in our calculator we show like what criteria do we use to decide this situation is high, this situation is low. So disagreements can exist, that's for sure. And once again, this is all open source. So if you disagree, you can help us change the calculator. But you know ahead of time, you can even basically calculate your bounty, and then we can have this discussion. if you disagree, and it happens, and sometimes we don't change, but sometimes we change if the argument is interesting. So yeah, expectations, making this clear. And also, when a question comes in, it means something wasn't clear. So if you can address that by adding documentation, making the policy clearer, or whatever way of communication you use, just to make sure this question doesn't come up again. So the next researchers can benefit from that.
All right. So one of the thing is researchers based in countries where you have restrictions of payment. So how do you handle that, like paying a researcher in a specific country?
So obviously we cannot pay out researchers in sanctioned countries, but we do welcome any researcher to submit through ethical or responsible disclosure. And we're happy to take a look at those reports, and we appreciate any activity that the hacker community can provide to help protect Microsoft users. When it comes to payments, we stick to the law on that, but and we use a few different payment vendors. So we use HackerOne and BugCrowd to help facilitate those payments as well.
Yeah, it's a bit of a cop-out answer, I guess, but since we use a platform, we just follow whatever the platform will pay. I mean, we never look at a person's location, nationality, or whatever. And if the platform will pay there, we'll be glad to send the money. And yeah, basically it's handled at the platform level for us because we don't completely run it independently.
So basically, when someone submits a vulnerability, we don't know the identity of this person because for GDPR, this is in our bug bounty partner, that is Zerocopter, is a European company similar to HackerOne. And basically, the company is following the laws of European Union. So if something for European Union is not allowed, I don't know, transferring some formats and so on, we stick to what our bug bounty partner is doing in this case. So we are not handling our payment directly, and we follow European law. This is also means that when you submit a vulnerability to our bug bounty program, you need to go to a process that certifies that you are a person that is not into money laundering operations and so on. So they have, I always call it a clearance check of the person that is a trustful person and so on. So basically here you need to follow the law in this thing, and you cannot pay. So we have also discussing about conflicts before. You have some researchers that say, oh, send my money on PayPal. No, you need to register in the platform, you need to be a real person and so on. So this is also a cause of conflict sometimes, but you need to explain to the researchers that you are a corporation and you cannot bypass process and do the simple payment on PayPal or PostePay or depends on the payment. But you need to follow some rules that otherwise is going crazy.
I don't pay bounties, so I don't know.
All right. So all of you are saying that, except for him, obviously, that you rely on the third party, like whoever is your payment vendor or bug bounty vendor, right? So theoretically, let's say if that vendor falls under certain legal laws where they are restricted to make payments, do you see that as a threat in terms of the researchers then not submitting to the platforms or to you and going in the black market?
What a good question. I'm going to answer this as diplomatically as I can without getting yelled at on Monday morning. So, like I said, we will, if there are currently no sanctions pertaining to administering bug bounty payments, then Microsoft will then pay that researcher through. We do have a Microsoft payment option, regardless of what our other payment vendors, BugCrowd or HackerOne, might choose to do with regard to those individuals in specific countries where there might be some gray area.
I think maybe it's naive or wishful thinking, but I think among the bug bounty community, the people where like if I can't get my bounty, then I go to the black market is a fairly minimal number of people, and those people were already likely to go to the black market anyway. So I think, I mean, does it increase that risk? Probably, but by how much, I don't think it's like a new threat we have to deal with. I think the black market threat is real and it exists regardless of any existing sanctions. And I don't think it's raised by a substantial amount. Let's say it like that.
So if you decide to, let's say that we get in a conflict and you are not willing to register on our bug bounty platform, one thing that we offer is donation to charity. So we have a list of charities that if you don't want to take the bounty, you can donate your money to that. So this is done by Zerocopter all the time, but there is these options that is, you have this option to donate to charities and so on. That I think is a good thing.
Something interesting that came up when we were discussing this topic too was a reminder that there are more incentives than just financial incentives. There's different ways that programs can work with the researcher community to reward them, and that looks like, for example, our MVR program, which Thomas is a part of.
I don't know.
I can confirm. But also the different types of engagements that we do with researchers, for example, supporting any publications or any type of talks that they want to do. So there are different ways that we are able to reward researchers that might not be eligible for bounty payments right now.
I think it's a good motivation sometimes. Like I knew that the UK government sends you this wonderful challenge coin if you find something in their system. So I went out to hack them just to get the challenge coin. I think there are good ways that are like, even if you don't have the capital to say money, to pay money, you still can, like, if you do cool stuff, people might still be friendly towards you. Right?
This is slightly out of context, but are you or any companies you know looking at crypto as payment options for researchers?
I believe that HackerOne offers, if you wanted to get paid out in Bitcoin or different options. So there are some platforms that do actually provide that already.
Yes, indeed. We pay through HackerOne. They support payment through Coinbase only, but with Coinbase they have Bitcoin and USDC payments. I know a lot of people in the hacker community would like them to support more than just Coinbase, but it's a start. Surely we'll see more in the future.
Zerocopter is offering Bitcoin payment at Ethereum, if I remember correctly. So we trust for the payments. It's totally transparent to the partner that we choose for the bug bounty program.
Cool. So then we don't really have to worry about sanctions then in the future.
The problem is this will not solve all of these issues, right? You still have the KYC and so on, so it's like still, yeah.
I mean, you need to, despite you have the payment on crypto, you need still to be a physical person that is recognizable as a legitimate person to receive money. So you cannot, we cannot send money to somebody that is not existing with a fake name. So you need to go through a verification process in the Zerocopter platform for that. I think it's very important to be super legal and transparent in these things.
Cool. And you mentioned regarding hardware bounties specifically. I know it's a different challenge to overcome when it comes to bug bounties for hardware because it's not the same as software or something that you can do online. But overall, what would you do to match? What do you do for matching skill sets of researchers with the scope and your targets?
So, of course, the setup of doing a web bug bounty is taking your PC and try to hack the website. If you want to do a bug bounty on a mobile phone, you need a list to buy a device. You can buy low-end devices or high-end devices, and the price can go from 500 to 1,000. Maybe in the process of finding a bug, you break some devices. We are totally aware that this can happen. Depends on the relationship that you create with the researcher. If the researcher provides useful bugs in the baseband or in the other parts of the device, we can provide devices to the researcher, because we know that he's a trustworthy person, that we work, we submit devices, and maybe we have a new product coming on the market, we give him the product in advance. Of course, maybe we can have additional NDAs or whatever, but it's a question of creating a relationship with the researcher. Our bug bounty offers high rewards to the 1 million euro, so I think that if you provide good research, we can provide adequate bounty for that.
It's an interesting point with hardware bug bounties, because like, let's say you find a vulnerability in, like a hardware vulnerability in a phone. They often only pay to like $3,000, but the phone, costs 1,000. You break one, it's now 2,000. So it's very difficult to get like a positive return on investment if you like do bug bounty for a living, let's say. It's an interesting problem that I haven't seen being solved nicely yet, but I guess they're now starting to do some initiatives.
Want to join our bug bounty program?
All right. So even in general for software bug bounties, how do you nurture the researcher in terms of matching their skill sets with the scope and the target?
So when I was with HackerOne, I made it a priority to, at each live hacking event, get to know a handful of researchers and then work with those researchers to ensure that I was pairing them with the right scope and the right programs. And I think from the vendor managed program side, it is about curating not just one or two researchers that add value to like your program, but rather curating 10 to 20 that might be able to kind of step up into that lead researcher role. And something that we were discussing earlier is that when you do have what I call an anchor hacker, it's almost disincentivizes the rest of the hacker community from then working on your program, because the assumption is that one researcher is submitting bugs and you'll get duped out on everything else, right? So one of the things that I started doing while with my HackerOne programs was reaching out to our hackers saying, do you have availability? We're going to be launching this new item into scope. It does align with some of your focus areas in the past. Is this something you'd like to do? And then setting up an educational webinar with the program team to do an overview of the scope and then give some good examples of what type of vulnerabilities they're looking for. So I think it's mostly around education, knowing who is available for that engagement, and then trying to deliver value that way. But then since moving over to Microsoft, what I did end up hearing from a Microsoft researcher is that was a very closed approach. And how do we engage more of the community that might not have been able to come and meet me at a live hacking event? So we're now focused on sending out quarterly outreach, detailing new items in scope, new focus areas, and being a lot more broad with how we're engaging our community and asking them to reach out to us at, again, bounty@microsoft.com. Let us know what your interest is, and we will work with you to partner and make sure that we kind of get you into a program or area of scope where you'll be most successful.
Thanks. Sounding like a broken record a little bit, but we rely a lot on the transparency, and basically all of our stuff is out there. So it's when you're working on closed source software, you kind of have to get used to it to try to understand how it works, and then you kind of figure out if that's a target for you, maybe, while everything is out there. And our challenge is just so that people realize that it is out there and they can go and read about all of that. And we also have a software that is updated. We have a big release on the 22nd of every month with a big list of all the features. So it's basically the menu at the restaurant for a bug bounty hunter. Like there's 24 new features, like, which one am I gonna hack? But people have to realize that this is out there, that they can look at it. So we update, we use social media. We share those posts on our networks. And also our bug bounty policy has a list of the good places to go to see what we're working on, what are the most recent things we released, so people can look at the menu and choose what they want. And we made a few Ask Me Anything session with our top hackers, where we invited people from our company, but also from the community to ask questions to those people, see how they work, what's interesting for them, and those sessions are public and everyone can look at them. So it's fun to understand how these people work and to get some inspiration from them, and maybe while watching that you get an idea and you can do the same thing as they did and submit the next big critical bug. So yeah, it's really about first step, putting the information out there, and then figuring out, making sure, matching information to Hacker, like, hey, this is out there, please go look at it. I swear it's really interesting.
So I follow a lot of conference or research and blog posts, and I try to reach out to people that is coming with outstanding research. So, for example, if there is a person that uses Frida to hook a particular system service and whatever, and in my opinion, I think that this research can be applied on our products, I reach out, I am running this bug bounty program. We want a test device to test your tool on this thing. I'm eager to help you to set up the environment and then submit the bugs and so on. So for me, it's important to harness, let's say like that, top talents. And I want to help them that the setup phase to test our device is minimum as possible. So some things are possible, some things are not possible, like providing root to mobile phones is not super easy or whatever. But in my opinion, engaging people that is coming up with new ideas, new research and so on is the thing that you have more benefit, because you are bleeding edge research that can be applied on your product. This for me is, with some of these people I had success to work, and we are super happy about the results of this precise direct engagement.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, especially on the community side, it's very, so again, I get like at least weekly emails asking me to submit to a bug bounty program, but very few feel like, hey, a lot of them feel just like, hey, do you want to work for us for free? You maybe get $500 for a critical bug. That just doesn't work like for a researcher, right? Like, there's no motivation for me, but when you have people who are actively, like, they haven't just seen your name, they actually engaged with what you've been doing, that's actually then quite interesting, because then they come like, hey, I've seen you've done XYZ. We can offer you devices to do this and that. We can't pay you for it directly, but there's a lot more, back and forth. It's not just an email. Here's a link to our HackerOne program, which really, like, I'm not a big fan of HackerOne. It's not a secret, because I just have been burned again and again and again, on that platform. But, right, which is very anonymous, because like, oh, here, please research our stuff. Here's a link, submit a bug, and then it gets closed, and you start discussing, and you start mailing people, at the company and so on. It's like, it's a mess, right? But when you have people who, on the bounty side, engage with the people and say like, I guess you even send like cake for Christmas, right? So, like that's different, because then you're also like, the goodwill is there, because again, if you do bug bounty, you're all already pretty skeptical that you will get any return. And so if there's better established communication path, I think that's already like establishes a bidirectional trust, basically.
Another thing that we spoke before is monetary bounty is important. And then we spoke about sending vulnerabilities to, let's say, unconventional buyers. Let's say like that. What you do when you have selling the vulnerability on unconventional buyers, you cannot brag on your research. If you submit to a bug bounty program with a dialogue with the vendor, you can say, okay, we fix the vulnerability and we allow our customers to receive the update and so on. We can reason that you can publish the vulnerability in a presentation and show that we cooperate together. Of course, these require time, and also here you can have conflicts about expectations. Oh, I have a conference next month, so you have 10 days to patch the bug, and I want to go to the conference. If you don't allow me to do that, I get bananas and I insult you. You need to find it and say, oh yeah, in 3 months, 4 months, give us 2 seconds to look at the patch, how many devices, how many backports we need to do the patch. So it's all the time question of connecting with people and find reasonable and explain. Most of the times people submit bugs and they say, oh, okay, they have one bug. It takes 1 second to change 1 line of code. They can make the patch and send it tomorrow morning. well, yeah, we have this patch, but then this patch is present in this branch, is present in this other. We need to do backport. We need this other country that don't have this type of devices. We need this other region. So it's all the time creating a dialogue and explaining each other where are the hiccups of the process on this.
That's where a lot of companies fail, right? Like if you look at the company that builds phone with a fruit on the back, it's like you send a bug, then it's silence. You ask for an update, silence. Eventually you get an email, like, yes, we've received your bug. Then 3 months later you learn, yeah, we've accepted your bug. A year later you learn, we will fix your bug. And then eventually it gets fixed. And then even later you learn like whether you get a bounty and so on. It's like a complete black hole and there's no way to get updates except to actually spam them regularly with emails. You know what I'm talking about? I can see. Yeah. So it's like, it's a terrible experience, right? But on the other side, they pay very well. So it's like a two-sided sword. But there are a lot of companies that turn a bug bounty into a complete black hole, which makes me very reluctant to submit bugs again.
So I don't say that we are perfect. We make mistakes. We are improving. We're working. We have a private bug bounty program because we want to give focus on the most prominent researchers and not be disturbed by a lot of rumor because, as I say, you can have researchers back bountying. So, I don't know. I think that you're familiar with the term. And then this is taking a lot of time in the triage team and so on. To me, when someone submits it, I'm asking to myself, what is the reply that I wanted with this type of submission? What would be a fair treatment for me? So this is what we try to give the researchers. Of course, not every case is going perfect. We have hiccups. We try to improve from our mistakes. And we make a triage wrong, then the researcher sends a better POC, but we change maybe the award. So it's a process that we need also to learn from our side.
I think we're almost out of time now. And you guys have been very sweet. I was hoping some punches going here and there to get even, but yeah, unfortunately that didn't happen. All right, so we'll open for audience question. I think we just have a couple of minutes. Any questions, anyone?
Okay, I had one specific for for you. And you mentioned before about backporting of patches. So I was curious, the Fruit logo company, they have a lifetime for a device that is around 7 years. So they will patch very old devices on Android. We know that's always mostly not the case. How is your policy? Like, are you all like the backports on how many old devices go back in the years?
So if I remember correctly, we have 3 years of porting on security patches for devices. I need to cross-check that. The question is that you have devices that are different region by region. So then you have a firmware for EMEA area, you have a firmware for Africa or whatever. And that requires time to release the firmware for all these things. So before going, for example, public with the vulnerability, all the things needs to be tested in the different release of the firmware. That's the point. I don't know if I answered to your question.
Okay, so something coming down the pipe that isn't quite ready yet, but might be in like 1 to 3 years, are zero-knowledge bug bounties. Essentially a way for you to mathematically prove that you have a bug of a certain impact without actually sharing the details of it. So imagine sending like a screenshot of you getting a shell, and the company has some ability to prove that it's not a forgery. How do you think that your companies would react to the development of something like that? And Mr. Stack Smashing, would you like prefer to only deliver bugs that way and like force people into using it? Like, can you weigh some of the pros and cons of a system like that being created?
Sure. I mean, like in the end, so let's say I will never sell exploits also, right? And so for me, a zero knowledge bug bounty doesn't really change anything, because like I would have the choice of either I disclose the bug or I don't. If I just send proof, oh, look what I have, tell me how much you're going to pay me, that sounds like extortion to me, like, or at least it's a path towards extortion. So I see I've all bug bounties to pre-negotiated extortion. Well, you see, yeah, that's why I don't know. I wouldn't call it that way. Like, the point is, I would disclose it anyway, even if I don't get money, and that's very important to me personally. So from an ethical, like, it wouldn't change anything for me because I would still have the same fight. I would still have, like, I will not say that just because they say I will not pay you money. Okay, no problem. I'm going to sell it on the black market. That's just not me, but I see how it could appeal to people. Right? But, I think it's technologically, I love it. But I just don't see, for me personally, a difference if that's the case.
All right. Sorry, guys. We are out of time. Yeah, we'll have to close it here. You can take the questions outside with the panel if you're interested. Really sorry. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you.